If you've ever gone to the shore, whether to a lake or the ocean or even, I suppose, a pond, you've probably caught one of those moments where the water seems completely still, almost like glass, like it's frozen and completely perfectly flat until a breeze kicks up, the wind kicks up, and all of a sudden you see these patterns emerge and you see ripples, you see waves, and it feels like something amazing is beginning, that you're witnessing what was clear and still and flat and basically nothing, and all of a sudden all these geometric patterns of ripples and waves and circles that radiate outwards. It sort of echoes the way the Bible actually begins. The opening story in the book of Genesis, as God creates the world, pictures the world being this sort of like swirling chaos, and then the Spirit of God, the wind from God, the Hebrew can mean both. The wind from God blows and broods over the waters. You almost picture water starting with ripples radiating out as God begins to create and says, "Let there be light," and then let there be plants and animals and sky and sea and you and me. That imagery of the Spirit blowing like wind has been in the memory of God's people in the Hebrew Scriptures for thousands of years, for a very, very long time. If you grew up in Judaism in the first century, you've heard that as probably as one of your first bedtime stories, mom and dad putting you to sleep with the story of God's Spirit hovering over the waters and blowing like the wind. So then, when the first followers of Jesus find themselves gathered in one room together, about 50 days after Jesus' resurrection from the dead, and the Spirit starts to move again like the wind, with the sound of the wind and rushing through them, and all of a sudden little flames of fire start to appear. You know, if you were trying to explain what you were living through, you might reach for that story and say, well, it's sort of like a whole new creation story. It's sort of like God beginning all over again, just like God did in the beginning with the swirling chaos, and then the Spirit of God blows like the wind and starts to bring geometric patterns and ripples and something beautiful out of it. God's doing something again now, creating a new way of being a human out of the whole mess of chaos of humanity, a new way of being human as the Spirit blows again. Every year, 50 days, 7 Sundays after we celebrate Easter, we tell the story of Pentecost, which was already a festival within ancient Judaism. So you'd all, if you were a first century observant Jewish person, you'd go to the temple in Jerusalem every year at Passover, and 50 days later you'd go back to celebrate another festival, Pentecost. And so all these people are gathered there together, and this is the moment God chooses, in a sense, to spark a new creation story, where the Spirit now is poured out on everybody, including the uneducated and the educated, men and women, the young and old alike, and they're gathered into this new community of Jesus followers. It's almost like a whole new creation is starting. That's actually the way the biblical writers want us to think of it. That the Pentecost story and the pouring out of the Spirit is God beginning a whole new creation. We aren't just waiting for one day in the distant future when God makes everything new. It's begun. We live in this, you could say, overlap between the old order of things and a new way of being human together, where for all of our differences, all the differences of language and culture and background, all of us can be brought into something new, like the Spirit breathing out and blowing over the chaos at creation in the beginning and bringing order and beauty and design out of it in the beginning. You know, sometimes we can feel like church is so pedestrian, like it's just so ordinary. It's just this routine thing I do for an hour on Sunday mornings. But to take the Scripture seriously is to say, being a Christian, being a part of this community called church, is nothing short of being in on God's new creation that's begun already right now. We tell the story of the Spirit being poured out every year exactly for that reason, to remember we aren't just like a social club or a pastime or a hobby. We're part of nothing short of God's whole new creation. You get hints of that in the story we tell at Pentecost. It echoes the way God creates in the beginning in that Genesis 1 poem. But maybe we might see every day of our lives as living out little glimpses of God's new creation here and now. And the question then becomes, well, how will things be when God's new creation is in fullness? Will justice be done or crookedness? Oh, justice, oh, we'll be people who practice justice. Will there be abundance for everybody, or will somebody go hungry? There will be abundance, and we'll practice that abundance and share our generosity now. Will people be welcomed or cast out in God's new creation? Welcomed? Well, then we'll practice that welcome now. Will truth and decency and courage and love be the order of the day? Yeah. Then those become our way of life now. We begin to anticipate now new creation. That's what it is to be a follower of Jesus, indwelt by the same Spirit who blew over the watery chaos in the beginning and brought forth the universe. That same Spirit is in you and me. That's the conversation we're having this coming Sunday as we celebrate the day of Pentecost. We invite you to be a part of it. See you Sunday.